Hello, my friends. Did you know? There was once a man who proved the earth moves and was punished for it. Some people say he was a hero of science. Others say he went too far against tradition. But in the end, only one truth remained. His name was Galileo Galilei, and this story will help your English. Before we begin, if you're ready to learn English through powerful stories, type "ready" in the comments and hit subscribe. Let's grow together. There was once a world where people were not allowed to think differently. Can you imagine that? More than 450 years ago, in a time without electricity, without internet, even without modern science, people believed something very simple. They believed the earth was at the center of the universe. Everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, moved around it, and this was not just an idea, it was law. If you disagreed, you could be punished. But then, in the year 1564, in the city of Pisa, Italy, a boy was born. His name was Galileo Galilei. He was not rich, he was not powerful, but he had something far more dangerous: a curious mind. Curious means wanting to know more, always asking questions. From a young age, Galileo was different. While other children played, he watched. He looked at the sky, at moving objects, at small details others ignored. Here is the surprise. One day, inside a church, he noticed a lamp swinging slowly from the ceiling. Most people saw nothing special, but Galileo saw a pattern. He counted his heartbeat and realized something incredible. No matter how wide or small the swing, the time stayed the same. This idea would later become the foundation of the pendulum, a tool used in clocks, and he was just a child. But then, life became harder. His father wanted him to become a doctor, because doctors earned money. So at 17, Galileo went to the University of Pisa, but he hated it. He didn't care about medicine. He cared about numbers, motion, the stars. So secretly, he changed his path. He began studying mathematics. Mathematics means the study of numbers, shapes, and patterns. He borrowed books. He listened to lectures he was not supposed to attend. And slowly, he became better than many teachers. Can you imagine that? A student teaching himself in secret. Eventually, he made a dangerous decision. He left medicine behind, no job, no money, no guarantee of success. But he followed his passion, and that decision changed everything. In his early 20s, Galileo was poor, but his mind was alive. One day, he saw people weighing gold, but their method was not accurate. Accurate means correct or precise. So, Galileo invented something new, a tool called the hydrostatic balance. It could measure the purity of metals using water. This small invention made people notice him. His name began to spread. But then, something bigger happened. At age 25, he became a professor in the city of Padua. For the first time, he had money, he had freedom, and most importantly, he had time to think. Suddenly, his life changed. In Padua, he didn't just teach, he experimented. He rolled balls down slopes. He dropped objects from heights. He measured time using dripping water. Experiment means testing an idea to see if it is true. And then, he discovered something shocking. Heavy objects and light objects fall at the same speed. This went against everything people believed. For centuries, people trusted the ideas of Aristotle, a famous ancient thinker. But Galileo said, "Let's test it." Here is the surprise. He even dropped 2 balls from the leaning tower of Pisa, and they hit the ground at the same time. Can you imagine that moment? A crowd watching, old beliefs breaking, truth falling from the sky. This was not just science. This was rebellion. But then, something even more powerful entered his life. In the year 1609, Galileo heard about a strange invention, a device that could make far objects look closer. It was called a telescope. Without seeing it, without instructions, he built one himself, piece by piece, lens by lens, and then, one night, he pointed it at the sky. This moment would change human history forever. He looked at the moon, and what he saw was not perfection. It had mountains, it had shadows, it had craters. The moon was not divine. It was a world, but then he looked deeper, at the Milky Way, and suddenly, what looked like a cloud became millions of stars. Here is the surprise. The universe was far bigger than anyone imagined. But the most shocking moment was still coming. One night, he looked at a bright planet, Jupiter, and beside it, he saw 4 tiny lights. At first, he thought they were stars. But then, they moved. Night after night, they changed position, until Galileo realized something impossible. They were not stars. They were moons, orbiting Jupiter. Orbiting means moving around something in a circle. This changed everything, because if moons could orbit Jupiter, then not everything revolved around Earth. This was the beginning of a dangerous truth, and Galileo had just discovered it. But then, the world began to watch him, and not everyone was happy. What do you think will happen next? Will Galileo be accepted or attacked? Comment accepted or attacked below, and don't forget to like the video so more people can learn English with us. But then, everything began to change. As Galileo's discoveries spread across Europe, people started talking. Some were amazed, some were confused, and some were angry, because what Galileo was saying was dangerous. He was not just talking about stars. He was challenging the truth that the Church had protected for centuries. And in that time, the Church was power. Can you imagine that? One man, with a telescope, standing against an entire system. But Galileo didn't stop. He published his discoveries in a book called Starry Messenger. Messenger means someone who brings news, and the news he brought shook the world. Suddenly, he became famous. He was invited to royal courts. He was respected. He was celebrated. But then, fame brought something else, attention. And not all attention is good. Priests and scholars began to attack him. They said his telescope was lying. They said he was dangerous. They said he was wrong. But Galileo believed something very simple. Truth must be seen, not just believed. Here is the surprise. He made an even stronger discovery. He observed the planet Venus, and he noticed something strange. Venus changed shape, just like the moon, sometimes full, sometimes half, sometimes a thin curve. This could only happen if Venus was moving around the sun, not the Earth. This was proof, clear, powerful, undeniable, but also very dangerous. Because if the Earth was not the center, then everything people believed was wrong. But then, the Church made a decision. In 16, they warned Galileo, "Do not teach this idea. Do not speak about it. Do not write about it." And he stayed silent. But deep inside, he knew the truth could not be hidden forever. Years passed. His health became weaker, but his mind was still strong. And then, He saw a new opportunity. A new pope came to power, a man who once admired him. So Galileo decided to write one final book, a book that would explain everything. He called it Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. It was written as a conversation. Three people discussing two ideas, one supporting the sun at the center, one supporting the earth at the center, and one asking questions. It looked safe, but it was not, because the truth inside the book was clear, and people understood it. Suddenly, the book spread everywhere. Scientists loved it, but the church was furious. They banned the book. And in 1633, Galileo was called to Rome to stand trial. He was old, he was sick, he was tired, but he went because he believed in truth. For weeks, he was questioned, pressed, threatened. They told him, "If you do not deny your ideas, you may be punished severely." Now imagine that moment. A man who knew the truth, standing in front of power with his life at risk. What would you do? Here is the moment that shocked history. Galileo made a choice. He did not fight. He did not shout. He did not resist. He agreed. He said he was wrong. He said the earth does not move. He said he would never teach it again. Why? Because he wanted to live. But some people say, after he stood up, he whispered quietly, "And yet, it moves." Did he really say it? We may never know. But the meaning was clear. Truth cannot be destroyed. After the trial, Galileo was not killed, but his life changed forever. He was placed under house arrest. House arrest means you cannot leave your home. He could not travel. He could not teach freely. He could not share his ideas. He was a prisoner in his own house. But then, something even more painful happened. His beloved daughter, Maria Celeste, died. She had been his support, his comfort, his strength, and now she was gone. Galileo was heartbroken. His body became weaker, and slowly he lost his sight. By 1638, he was completely blind. Can you imagine that? A man who spent his life looking at the stars, now could see nothing. But here is the surprise. Even in darkness, he did not stop. He continued thinking. He continued teaching through others. He dictated his ideas to students. Dictate means to speak, so someone else can write it down. And in that silence, he created another masterpiece. A book about motion, about physics, about how the world works. His ideas were secretly taken out of Italy and published in another country, far from the control of the church. And slowly, the truth began to spread. Other scientists saw the same things, tested the same ideas, confirmed his discoveries, and the world started to change. But Galileo did not live to see it fully. In 1642, at the age of 77, he passed away. No grand funeral, no celebration, just silence. But that silence did not last, because ideas do not die. Years passed, decades passed, centuries passed, and slowly, the world realized something. Galileo was right. Scientists built on his work. New discoveries were made. A man named Isaac Newton was born the same year Galileo died. He would later explain gravity and build on Galileo's ideas. The scientific revolution had begun, and Galileo was at its center. Then, after more than 300 years, in 1992, the church finally said something. They admitted they were wrong. Galileo had been right all along. Can you imagine that? 3 centuries to accept the truth. But today, his name lives everywhere. in science, in schools, in space. A spacecraft named Galileo was sent to Jupiter, the same planet he once observed, as if his eyes had returned to the stars, and now his greatest legacy remains. Not just what he discovered, but how he thought. He taught us to question, to observe, to test, to think for ourselves, because sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is not strength, it is truth. And that is the story of Galileo Galilei, a man who chose truth even when it cost him everything, a man who lost his freedom but gave the world a new way to see. Today, every time you look at the sky, every time you ask why, you are continuing his story. I wish you peace and success. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep growing your English. Lessons. Always question what you are told. Truth needs evidence. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is choosing truth quietly. Even if you are alone, your ideas can still change the world. If you believe Galileo did the right thing, type truth in the comments. If you think he should have fought harder, type courage. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful English stories.